What's up, family? So in this video, we're going to be going over a full breakdown of a credit report. That way you know how to go through your credit report, but you also understand what is it that you see and what it means. So I'm going to be translating what is on that credit report so that you can take control of your credit and take those first steps to start improving your credit. So typically, when you go to your credit report, understand that we have two credit bureaus here in Canada. So we have Equifax, we have TransUnion, but below this, we have sub companies that offer you free access to your credit report, such as Credit Karma and Borrowwell. So it's important that you have access to both of these platforms because different banks use different credit bureaus. So for example, if I were to go into BMO, then they're going to use Equifax to approve me for a credit product. And if I were to go over to, let's say, RBC, then they're going to use TransUnion to approve me for that product. Okay, so it's important that you have access to both. Now, for this video, I'm going to be using the structure of Credit Karma to go through the credit report, but this is just as translatable over to Borrowwell, aka Equifax. Okay, so when you first log into Credit Karma, the first thing you should see is your credit score. So that should be there, big and bold. And then underneath it, you should see a green button that says something along the lines of View My Full Credit Report or View Report. Okay, so and this is with desktop browser. So if you click on that green button, then it's going to take you into your credit report. Okay, and then the first thing you're going to see next is your personal information. So you should see the spelling of your name, you should see your address, and then sometimes it may even show you a phone number. Now, a lot of people make a mistake and they just kind of quickly glance over this and then they move forward in their credit report, but you may have hidden information there that does not belong to you. Okay, so if you're on that desktop browser, you should see a button that says show more. Okay, so you can click on that show more button, and then there it's going to bring you to another page, which then shows you the breakdown of all of your personal information. Now, if you have a thin profile, let's just say you have one credit card, then I don't expect it for you to have a lot, but you may have a lot of things here. So you may have multiple spellings of your names, different variations of your names. Maybe you have your first, middle, last. Maybe you just have your first and your last, which is fine. What we want to check here is we actually just want to make sure that the spelling of our name is correct. So as long as it is your first, last name, or first, middle, and last, then that's completely fine. If you're a junior or the third, then you may want to have that identified on your credit report. That way nothing gets cross-referenced with your parent, right? So that's the first thing I would look for within that personal information section. The next thing that I would want to check is the addresses. Okay, so a lot of times when I'm working with clients, they have addresses that never even belong to them, right? So it may be an address you never even lived at. It's completely okay if you have an address that you lived at in the past. That's normal. That's accurate information. That is not false information. You should not be trying to remove that. That's completely fine. So as long as all the addresses that you recognize actually do belong to you, then that's completely fine. You can keep that information there. And then that last thing that you should see within that section is your phone number. Okay, so now it's actually very common to see phone numbers that don't belong to you. Even myself, I believe I have a phone number that doesn't belong to me. But even with that, usually this doesn't tie any accounts back to you. So the most important thing is the spelling of your name and your addresses. Phone numbers aren't as important. Now, if you're like myself, where you are laser focused on making sure everything is correct, then you may want to fix that. But I do want to give a warning that usually with phone numbers, those are probably one of the more harder things to fix. And I don't know why TransUnion and Equifax are so difficult with that, but it can be one of the more difficult things to remove, right? So make sure that it is a phone number that you have, or you at least had it in the past. Okay. Now you may be asking yourself, how did they get that information in the first place? So there's multiple ways. Okay. So let's just say, for example, you have a checking account. Anytime you go and you open up a checking account, the bank actually pulls your credit. Now, sometimes they're supposed to ask you to pull your credit, but they'll pull your credit because they want to be able to also offer you a product within that same breath. Okay. Because the reps at the banks, they get commission for all of that, right? So that's how they get a bit of that information, because when they pull your credit, they do need to submit your name, your address, your phone number, your employment. So you may even see your employment on your personal information section as well, which you may be trying to figure out, how did they get that information? all of this information is shared with the credit bureaus, okay? This is basically the file of who you are as a consumer at the end of the day. When you apply for credit cards, when you apply for products, you fill out that information, okay? You fill out that information, and then they share that information with the credit bureaus in order to pull your credit report to see if they can approve you or not, which then allows the credit bureaus to update the information that you have on your credit report, okay? So if you do see anything there that in the personal information section that does not belong to you, then you need to remove, you need to dispute, and get rid of that information off of your credit report, okay? Next, if you were to go back, you would see the main page again within your credit report, all right? You would scroll down from that personal information section, and then you would see what we call the revolving section. Revolving section, don't overcomplicate it. It just means credit that you can use over and over again. So for example, credit cards. You can use credit cards over and over again. You can use line of credits over and over again. So these type of accounts would be in the revolving section, okay? Now, the main important thing here that you want to check, which each one of those accounts that you have in the revolving section, you can click on and you can see the accounts details within each of these accounts, okay? And you can do the same thing for the next sections, but you would click on these accounts, and all you want to make sure with these accounts that there are no late payments on these accounts. That's one of the most important things, because payment history makes up 35% of your credit, which is the biggest aspect of your credit score, okay? So that's going to be the first thing that you do with each of your accounts. And then you can check the narratives for those accounts. Make sure that it doesn't say anything along the lines such as bad debt write-offs, into collections, things like this, okay? Now you can go back and you'll want to repeat this process for each one of your revolving accounts, okay? The next section below revolving is the installment account. And before I jump into the installment, if you don't have any revolving accounts, aka credit cards, then there won't be any revolving section there, okay? That's just how Credit Karma's platform works. But if you do, then you should see something in the revolving section, okay? And if you don't have a credit card and you're trying to build your credit, what are you doing? You should have yourself a credit card in order to help you build your credit, okay? Next is the installment section. Installment is simply just the loans that you have that have an end date, okay? So for example, your auto loans, student loans, your mortgage, things like this would show in the installment section. And then for them, it's extremely simple. You just want to make sure that there are no late payments. So it's going to be the same thing for your revolving. It's going to be the same thing for your installment accounts. We just want to make sure there's no late payments. But what really makes the revolving section more important is that it shows us the last reported balance and the limit that we have for our credit cards, which helps us make up our utilization, which makes up 30% of our credit score, which is the second biggest aspect of our credit, okay? So you could use all this information to make adjustments accordingly to start improving your credit. Moving on from the installment section, if you have any open accounts, open will be if you have any charge cards, just an Amex card, you would see that there. If you have any phone bills from TELUS or Rogers, you would see that there in that section. And other type of miscellaneous type of accounts like that, you would see that in the open section. And that's usually not a problem for most. Most people can make their phone bill payments on time. So again, as long as you don't have any late payments, then you are okay. Now, if you are a seasoned credit user, then you most likely have closed accounts. So underneath the open section of your credit report, then you're going to have a section that says closed accounts. You can click here, and the most important thing with closed accounts, make sure that all the accounts are zeroed off, because if you close the account, it's very important that you pay the debt off. So make sure all those accounts are zeroed off, okay? And then further, if you want to take it a step further, you can click on those accounts, okay? And then go down to the narratives. Make sure none of these say bad debt write-offs into collections, or there's no late payments. Credit Karma, one thing I like about them is really cool. They have the X's or the checks for on-time payments. Make sure there's no X's. Make sure there's no negative derogatory narratives associated with any of these closed accounts, because this could be on the back end still hurting your credit. So many people don't even check the closed accounts, and it's just sitting there hurting your credit, okay? And basically what we're doing right now, you're just building a list of the items that you need to dispute, right? So I'm helping you identify the items that are hurting your credit, And then this is going to be things that you need to either work with the original creditor to fix or to dispute. Okay. So after we get out that closed account, then you can return back. And if you continue to go down, then you would see the public record section. Okay, so if you have any insolvencies, such as a consumer proposal, any judgments, anything that has gone through court that's on your credit report, such as you were recently sued for debt by a creditor, or child support can sometimes show here in this section. All that information can be on that credit report. Okay, uh, and then furthermore, you may have a collection section. Just below this, there should be a collection section. Okay, collection section is going to be all the accounts that have been sold to a third-party collection company. Now, these are the accounts that are doing the most damage. But even though they're doing the most damage, if you were to be able to get those removed, it would also help you the most as well. Okay, so usually if I'm working with a client, this is the first section I want to run to. And most people want to run to this section first, right? Because this is the pressing issue. So you want to make sure you start disputing these accounts or either working with the collection companies if you actually know you owe the debt and they've been able to provide you with proof of debt. Then you want to try to negotiate a pay for deletion with that collection company. But the goal should be to get that removed completely off of your credit report and not you taking a settlement deal. A settlement deal is not a good deal. Typically what happens with a settlement deal is that you pay that account off and then that debt is still just sitting there on your credit report. Okay, so that's one thing that you want to remember as well. Lastly, on your credit report, we have the inquiry section. Okay, the inquiry sections is basically a list of all the accounts that you have applied for. Now, if you remember earlier from what I said in this video, not every bank uses the same credit bureau. So if I go to BMO, or let's just say an extreme Equifax user, if I go to TD and I apply for a credit card, then there's a low chance that they're actually going to report that over to TransUnion. And then it's going to be the same for CIBC. If I go to CIBC and I apply for a credit card, then there's a low chance that that's actually going to show up over onto Equifax. Okay, so basically all those inquiries that you see in the inquiry section for your Credit Karma were those that have been pulled directly from TransUnion. So we can tell from that list that these lenders looked at our TransUnion credit report and made a decision based off of that information. Okay, so if you have more than 6 inquiries, it's time to start disputing those inquiries. If you have a bunch of inquiries that you don't recognize, you should be disputing those inquiries. Get that stuff removed, clean up your credit profile. A good credit profile does not have more than 3 inquiries. So we want to make sure we're sitting in that sweet spot. Okay, but this is basically, I just did a light video on how to go through your credit report, study it. If you have more questions, don't be afraid to email me, reach out. I'm more than happy to help. You can email me at info@kennyjohnsonuniversity.com. I'll put it along the bottom of the screen. If you have collection accounts, reach out to me. I own a credit repair company. We help you dispute, remove collection accounts. That's going to be the most important step in order for you to start increasing your credit. Okay. Thank you for watching the video. Please like, comment, and subscribe. And until next time.